MCA. I'd like to thank you for joining us. Welcome to the 2010 Friday Forum lecture series entitled D/Reconstructing the American Dream. Today's lecture is entitled Tea Parties, Political Parties, and Predictions for the 2010 Midterm Elections with our guest speaker, Brian Gaines. Before I introduce you to the head table and our speaker, I'd like to invite you all to look at the brochures that are on your seats or in front of you to see some upcoming YMCA events. You'll see our Tuesday series, which happens at noon on Tuesdays, known as Know Your University. This week we will be hosting Nancy Abelman and Diane Harris, who are part of the Illinois Program for Research in the Humanities. So if you'd like to learn more about that, we invite you to join us. I'd also like to call your attention to next Friday's Friday Forum, in which we'll be hosting Michael Leroy, who is a professor in the School of Labor and Employment Relations. He will lead a discussion on partisan judicial elections and their impact on campaigns. So we really hope that you'll be able to join us for those events. We'd like to thank each of our co-sponsors for financially supporting Friday Forum. A list of these campus and community organizations can be found on the series postcards in front of you. Sign language interpreters are available for this and any talk in the series, as long as you contact the Y on the Tuesday prior to the Friday event, or if it's not a Friday event, just give us a couple days notice. Friday Forum is rebroadcast on WEF 90.1 Community Radio. On Mondays from 6 to 7 p.m. Because of that, when we get to question and answer, I will walk around with this remote microphone. We ask that you wait to ask your question until you've been handed the microphone so that we can make sure that we get any questions that you ask on the air. And at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce you to today's head table. We are joined by Shana Harrison, who is the political director for College Democrats. Rick Winkle, who is a former Illinois, a member of the former... I'm just going to keep stumbling over my words forever. He is a former Illinois State Senator, an adjunct professor of law, and the director of the Institute of Government and Public Affairs Office of Public Leadership. There you go. And now it is my pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker. Brian Gaines is an associate professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of Illinois. He's also a member of IGPA, which is the acronym I just stumbled over. Professor Gaines joined the Department of Political Science in 1995, immediately after receiving his PhD from Stanford University. He has also been a visiting professor at the Department of Applied Economics at the Catholic University in Belgium, and he has served on 2 royal commissions in his native Canada. His research interests are elections, political behavior, and political institutions. He is currently researching the effects of the uncontested Illinois legislative races on turnout, the seat shares of the parties, and outcomes of statewide races over the period of 1982 to 2002. He's also analyzed the empirics and theory of voting on the Winkus Link game show. Professor Gaines' most recent publications include a collaboration with his political science colleague Wendy Cho, Breaking the Benford Law, Statistical Fraud Detection in Campaign Finance, with a collaboration from his IGPA colleague Jim Kuklinski, Interpreting Iraq, Partnership and the Meaning of Facts, published in the Journal of Politics. We are very excited to have him here today to talk to you about the upcoming midterm elections, and hopefully he will be a much more eloquent speaker than I have been thus far.
I might use the entire period. 1, 2, 3. During the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of the year, as I passed through a singularly dreary tract of land, there it is. Okay, so that's all I'll do. That was the beginning to The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, which is my preferred sound check. So I could just let loose with a burst of predictions and tell you, here's what I think is going to happen in the election, and then stop there and take questions. But I thought instead I would talk a little bit about how political scientists go about making predictions. I'll review a few different forecasts that are out there, and I'll definitely give lots of time for questions, but also because Tea Parties is in the title, before I'm done, I'll make sure I say at least a little bit about what my sense about what to make of the Tea Party phenomenon, which isn't really brand new, but it's brand new in the extent to which it seems to be having a big impact on the election. Okay, so if you're trying to figure out first of all, what to predict about the election, the very first question you might ask is, well, who's going to control the House? I don't need the nitty-gritty of exact seat counts. I just want to know who's going to control the House, who's going to control the Senate. I can ask that question about the federal government, about the Illinois government, and about 49 other state governments. And if you wanted to know, you could consult a political scientist. If you really wanted to not only make a prediction, but love the sound tech, make some money out of it, you could think, well, I'm going to bet on this. And in fact, there are betting markets. So your first forecasting device would be, let's just look at the betting markets. And the University of Iowa Business School set up a futures market for political predictions. They had to get permission from the Justice Department to do this, to allow people legally to bet on politics in the American government, but they persuaded the feds that this was a useful research device. So for something like 20 years, you've been able to go to the University of Iowa webpage, set up an account, and then buy future shares, where essentially what you're buying is a share that pays off according to the outcome. If you think the Republicans are going to control the U.S. House, you buy it for whatever they're charging, and you get $1 if in fact the Republicans do get control of the House, and if they don't, you get nothing. And the Iowa markets have been pretty good as predictors of what's going to happen, but not perfect. One reason you might think they don't work so well is that they're capped. You can only put $500 in, so nobody's going to you're not going to turn yourself into George Soros with the shrewd predictions here. But in fact, the British and Irish bet on absolutely everything. And so there are British betting markets where one can bet on American politics. I shouldn't say shouldn't encourage anyone here to do any betting on these things. But those who are so inclined can put money on the outcomes, and there's a huge amount of money on them. And if you believe that betting markets ought to be sort of useful ways to acquire aggregate information, what do the betting markets say at the moment? At the moment, the U.S. House, shares for Republicans take the U.S. House, are trading at about 89 cents. So people who are putting their money where their mouth is strongly believe the Reaps are going to take the House. Democrats are going to take the Senate, is at about 59 cents. So the smart money, at least most of the money, is saying Democrats will control the Senate, Reaps will take the House. And again, why would you believe these things? Well, people are putting their money. It's not just some smart guy, political scientist, crunched some numbers and was given a microphone and allowed to pontificate. This is where people are really betting with their actual dollars. Okay, so they're betting markets. You can go look at them. And in fact, if you want to know who's going to win particular races, as I say, the British bet on absolutely everything. There are betting markets for individual races. You want to make a bet on who's going to win the Senate race in Delaware, Colorado, Kentucky. There are markets. You can go look at them, see what the shares are trading at. If you wanted to be more specific and say how many seats, I'm not just interested in the majority. I want to know how many seats there are going to be. This is perhaps where